The reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I was having a chat with a friend recently who's relatively new to faith. And with everything going on in the world right now, all the wars happening, the stuff
Rumours
going
of
on
wars,
with
actual wars.
Yes, yeah, all of the stuff with America, Iran, Israel, the Middle East, everything. She had had a lot of people in her life telling her that this was the sign of the end times. The world was about to change dramatically. The world's about to end. And she was talking about how much it was stressing her out and how scared she was. And she didn't really know what to do with that information. And it made me think, I bet there's a lot of people that are feeling that right now and that we should talk about it.
Yeah. Can I just say it's not possible for us to do, as you've just found out off air, as I started waxing lyrical, it's not possible to do this topic justice in the very short time that we have. So this is going to sound like an opportunistic tease and plug for my Substack, but if you go to alongtheway.nz, I have an article coming this Saturday that unpacks why, and this might irk some people, why I think the Left Behind series in particular, a series of fictional books that started to be released in 1995, that is all about a particular theology around end times, why it should have been completely ignored by the time that it came out. And I unpack the history of some of its ideas and why I think it was problematic. The first indicator there for me as to why I think some of those ideas that your friend has taken on board are problematic and need to be critiqued and questioned is because it's led to stress and fear. If it leads to stress and fear, that is our first indicator that there's something not right here. I would also say if what you're being told causes you to spend more time focusing on the headlines, global headlines in particular, than it does focusing on your neighbour, again, there's a real problem with it. So I think that's a first port of call, is if it's causing me to feel scared, if it's causing me to feel stressed and it's causing me to become hyper-vigilant about who might be bombing who, with no question of justice there about how we help those who are the victims of war, but rather who's right and who's wrong, how does it tell me about when the world's going to end, then it needs to be questioned. I think that's a great starting point. And if our interpretation of Scripture takes us there rather than into Jesus' encouragement to love our neighbour, then we need to question our interpretation of Scripture as well.
Yeah, but it doesn't help when there's a whole lot of rhetoric around about, the time is near, prepare the way because, I don't know, second coming, rapture, which I'm not even going to try and explain.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of stuff out there that would make people nervous, that would make people feel insecure about themselves.
Okay, the rapture.
Go on.
Again,
Say your
I'm going to
piece.
step on some toes here. The rapture, as it's commonly understood in some church circles now, not the majority of Christendom, some church circles now, is a novel new idea.
Okay.
And it can be argued very well whether it's in Scripture or not. We could go through all the verses that talk about a possible rapture, and I can show you how it does not lead to what's commonly understood. It comes from a vision from a lady in Glasgow in 1830, and then it's adopted by some relatively influential evangelists and a couple of theologians, but up until 1830, that idea just did not exist in the church. The church has always existed in what we would call the end times. If you read Scripture, there's a great sense among the early Christians and Paul that they're in the end, that these are the last days. We've been in the last days, according to Scripture, since the crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus, and particularly the destruction of the temple and the sacrificial system in AD 70, where Jerusalem was sacked by Rome. We've essentially been in the end since then. Now, again, there's so much to unpack there in terms of Scripture and how we read Scripture, particularly some passages in Matthew that are apocalyptic, Daniel, and very much the book of Revelation. And we're dealing with a particular type of literature there that has a particular way that it needs to be read that is not about, how do I frame this? It's not about literally, what are the headlines saying and how do they map onto the book of Revelation? Something like the book of Revelation, apocalyptic literature, it's most important to know that it is most true for the people that it is first written for. So a lot of people are reading Revelation as if it's been completely irrelevant, apart from pointing people to some possible hope at the end. It's been completely irrelevant up until the headlines that we're reading in our generation. But it was written for first century Christians who were within persecution. So it is most true for them. They're the ones who would have most understood the symbolism. It's most true for them. But then the beauty of apocalyptic literature is that there's an element of truth that is true all the time. So every generation can read the book of Revelation and find hope and truth in it, and elements of their own, which is why you can go through almost every generation and find every generation of Christians over the last 2,000 years thinking now is it. And we should always live as if it's now, as if Jesus is going to come back today. So we should be questioning our life and how well we're loving our neighbour based on that idea, not sitting around looking at the headlines going, is it going to happen?